Right, guys, it's story time again. Get yourself a nice cup of tea. Get all snuggled up in front of the fire. But if you're in Florida, don't do that because it'll probably kill you. I'm not built for this weather. But I want to tell you this story. So, it was a blustery Saturday morning, the kind where the cold wind slices through even the thickest of coats, biting at the exposed skin. Edward Kimball pulled his collar up against the chill as he made his way down the bustling streets of Boston. His footsteps echoing off the cobblestones. His thoughts were heavy, weighed down by a relentless inner turmoil. Now, Kimball was a Sunday school teacher, a position he held with an almost solemn sense of duty. Every week, he stood before a group of restless, often unruly boys, trying to plant the seeds of faith in their young hearts. So, it wasn't easy. In fact, it was grueling. The boys fidgeted, whispered, and seemed more interested in everything but the gospel. Kimball often wondered if he was truly making any difference, or if his efforts were nothing more than a drop in the endless ocean. One boy in particular, Dwight, seemed particularly resistant to the message. He was a boy, simple means, working long hours in a shoe store, to support himself. Kimball had seen the way Dwight's eyes glazed over during the lessons, how he seemed more interested in the world outside the church walls than in the scriptures. Than in the scriptures that Kimball so passionately tried to impart. But something gnawed at Kimball's heart. That morning, an unshakable urge that he couldn't ignore. It was as if an invisible hand was pushing him forward, compelling him to do something out of the ordinary. Today, he decided he would not simply pray for Dwight from afar. No, today he would seek him out, find him where he worked, and speak to him directly about the state of his soul. Kimball's steps quickened as he neared the shoe store where Dwight worked. He hesitated for a moment at the door, steeling himself for what he was about to do. The bell above the door jingled as he entered, and the warmth of the shop washed over him. The smell of leather and polish filled the air. He scanned the store until he spotted Dwight, busy in the stockroom, his hands moving mechanically as he arranged boxes on the shelf. For a moment, Kimball felt this wave of doubt. What if this was a mistake? What if Dwight rejected him and brushed him off? Or worse, laughed at him? But the urging within him was too strong to ignore. He took a deep breath, straightened his shoulders, and walked into the stockroom. Dwight, he called out, his voice steady, despite the nervous flutter in his chest. And Dwight turned, surprised to see his Sunday school teacher standing there. "Mr. Kimball," he asked, with a hint of confusion in his voice. Kimball wasted no time at all. With a quiet intensity, he spoke to Dwight about the importance of knowing Christ personally, not just as a figure in a book, but as a living Savior, the living God. The words tumbled out of him, driven by a force he could barely comprehend. in that it cramped dimly. In that cramped, dimly lit stockroom, among the boxes and shoes, Kimball laid out the gospel as clearly and urgently as he knew how. And something incredible happened. Dwight's hardened expression softened. The gospel, which had seemed like just another story, suddenly became real to him. There, surrounded by the mundane trappings of his daily life, Dwight L. Moody gave his heart to Christ. But this, ladies and gentlemen, this was only the beginning. Moody's conversation set off a chain reaction that would ripple across continents and generations to come. Under his ministry, countless souls were saved, including a man whose name was Wilbur Chapman. And Chapman became an evangelist in his own right, preaching to thousands. Among those who heard his message was a professional baseball player named Billy Sunday. Now, Billy Sunday was a man of action, fiery and unyielding. And when he gave his life to Christ, he did so with the same passion that he once brought to the baseball diamond. He left the game and joined Chapman's team, spreading that gospel far and wide. But the story didn't end there. Another young man, his name was Mordecai Ham, was converted under Sunday's ministry. Ham was a preacher of a different sort, intense, scholarly, and unafraid to confront sin head on. He was known for his dramatic tactics. He once even rented a hearse to parade down the town, a stark reminder of the wages of sin, which is death, as we know. When Ham held a series of meetings in Charlotte, North Carolina, a lanky, sandy-haired high school student named Billy Frank found himself drawn to the services. Despite having sworn he wouldn't attend, he said he'd never attend. The sermons gripped him, the words cutting through his teenage skepticism like a knife. Night after night, he returned, unable to shake the feeling that something profound was happening. Wow. Finally, one night as Ham delivered yet another impassioned sermon, Billy Frank could resist no longer. He walked forward, his heart was pounding in his chest, and he surrendered his life to Christ. The world would soon know him by a different name, Billy Graham. Wow, Billy Graham. Billy Graham would go on to preach to more people than anyone else in history, carrying the message of salvation to the farthest corners of the globe. From the slums of India, the stadiums of America, millions heard the gospel because of that one Saturday morning in a Boston stockroom. Wow. And it all began with Edward Kimball, a humble, often discouraged Sunday school teacher who refused to give up, even when it seemed that his efforts were in vain. Kimball could never have imagined the far-reaching impact of that single conversation. But God knew, as the old saying goes, you can count the apples on a tree, but who can count the apples in a seed? Unbelievable. 2.5 billion people he reached. So the next time you find yourself questioning the worth of your efforts, remember this: the ripple effects of faithfulness can reach farther than you'll ever know. Like Kimball, do your part and trust God to handle the rest. The results may just change the world. Wow, amazing. I love you guys, and I hope you enjoyed this story. God bless you. Till next time, keep it biblical.